Hi. So, what are the drawbacks to reading digital text? For one, I'm going to show you an example. So here is a non-digital text. So, Pride and Prejudice, my favorite book. And as you can see, it's a book with pages. It smells like a book, it looks like a book, it feels like a book. It's very tangible. I can hold it in my hand. If I want to show you a line in it, I can thumb through it and find it where I might have left off, and you can see my notes where I've underlined things and made notes in the margins where I've highlighted. It's very much personalized to myself as a reader. So this is one benefit of a print text that you don't get digitally. Another example is, so you might think this is very boring because all there are words here, but then you have, what's this? The graphic novel, Pride and Prejudice. So here you have the pictures accompanied by the words, and if I want to show you my favorite part, I can thumb through it, and we can have a like experience and have a little discussion about it. Because whether I read it, or you read it, or my cousin reads it, we're gonna read the same text, and that you don't get with a digital text. Let's see here. So with Pride and Prejudice, I might, I'm used to it. It's a medium I'm used to, and a digital text, I'm not as comfortable with it. Therefore, I'm going to read slower. I'm going to comprehend less. My reading might be a little less accurate because on the digital screen, I might be scanning, which is something I'm used to doing on the computer for work. Multitasking, so I'm not going to read a digital text the same way that I read a book. When I read a book, I am engrossed in it, I am experiencing it. When I read it digitally, I don't have the skill set yet, or it's not as comfortable for me to read it, and therefore I'm not as good at it, where maybe people of this current generation, or people who are more tech savvy, they might easily read it and think it's fantastic and think it's the medium for them and it fits their lifestyle. And for me, I want to cuddle on the beach with my dogs, if they're allowed, and read through a book. So I think there's something to be said about being able to have a text in your hand, to read it from beginning, middle, and end, because that's the other thing you don't get in a digital text, is you don't know where the ending is, where the beginning is. You're put somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and you have to kind of figure out what's going on and where you are, and navigate it from there. So instead of a journey of a regular textbook where you go from one end to another, you are thrown to the wolves. But it's not that dramatic, actually. But take a digital text such as the Unknown, for example. In that text, I was immediately brought into the circumstance where Dirk was stabbed to death by mimes, and I had no context to understand if this was actually taking place, if it was a dream, if the narrator was being ironic, if they were... I didn't know what the tone was, if I was supposed to be appalled, if I was supposed to think it comical, if I had no ability to... I had no history with the text and no context to be able to fully understand that point. And then the other thing with digital text, so with the unknown, is you click on a hyperlink and you're transported to another page, and then that transports you to another, and there's so many different choices that it's almost overwhelming. So instead of, chronological order or linear order, you are just teleported from one instance to another, what you call Lexia page to another, and it's going to be different for every reader because you are clicking on different things and choosing different things. And for example, in the unknown, they had a map where you could click on the different places, and then it had the different storylines that went to those different geographic places. Or you can choose different categories. There are different colored categories, and it would list all the different pages or stories or letters that had to do with that certain category. And then within those, you would click a hyperlink and be on a completely different realm of the story. So that's the part about digital text that's is you are immersed in it differently, where it seems bigger, and you almost can't wrap your mind around it, and there's no beginning, no middle, and no end, and therefore no conclusion. So if you like to have your stories wrapped up with a tight little bow and a happy ever after, it's not gonna happen. At least not in my experience so far, and I've read 3, and there's more than 3 out there, so I could be wrong. But for those who are used to the linear passage of time, of chronological order, which I give, not all books are, but there's something about the print text that, and the way that we read, left to right, top to bottom, that is the way we're programmed. And the digital text challenges that linear ability that we have. So that's interesting. The other thing is that for readers, the reading of a digital text is less private. It's part of this mass system. So when you're alone with your book, it feels like a private experience and personal. And when you're on the computer, on the web, on a digital text, you feel like you're a minion. Just one of those people, like anybody else, reading this text online, and it's just massive. So that's interesting. But like I said, so with the unknown, it jumped around a lot. You never knew where you were, and that's sort of the downfall of reading digitally, is that in order to incorporate those hyperlinks and to make each Lexia stand on its own, it has to be a certain kind of writing that's not necessarily a one that lends itself well to storytelling. It's it seems like a different beast, and you may disagree, but it seems like something else entirely. Alright, so the benefits of reading a digital text, some would say there are a lot. For me, I would say probably the main thing is that it's more portable and convenient, especially if you have an e-reader or Kindle. One of the really cool things about those as well is that you can load multiple books to them. So if I went to the beach with my print book and I finished it, I would have nothing else to read. Where if I had one of those portable e-readers or Kindles or something, theoretically I'd be able to have more literature to read, or whatever I had in my repertoire. So that is definitely a convenience. And the other thing is that you also have access to more information while you're reading. So you could look up different websites to reference things if they came up, to help you understand the text, to read commentary on the text, to read reviews of books, and so you have a lot more information at your fingertips. The other cool thing, which this is pretty cool actually, so if I'm reading my print book and I come across a word I don't know, I'm probably not going to have my dictionary with me unless I'm reading at home. But if I had one of these portable devices, then I could read and look up a word, or even look up a reference or something. That's more of a the word terminology that I didn't know. So those are all things that are pretty nifty about the reading digitally. You also, there's these e-readers that can learn your reading habits, and I guess it could recommend books to you. It could, I guess there's benefits of a text knowing your reading habits and doing some thinking for you, if you like that sort of thing. And so I think in terms of reading the unknown, which is a digital text, and what the benefits are of that, I think for me personally is the exposure to something new, a different medium that I haven't read before, and to challenge myself and to untrain my brain from thinking chronologically and linearly is, I think, important, because they say the more you do things how you normally do them, the less your brain has to think about it, and it's like wearing down a shoe. Or like my car, when I left my emergency brake on and then I couldn't get it off, and I had to take it, or have the mechanic come in, and because it had worn. I don't really understand cars, but that was really annoying. So I don't want that happening to my brain. I don't want it to get stuck and have to take it to the mechanic. So expose myself to these type of new texts and new mediums is important. Yeah, that's part of education. So that's my little ditty about the benefits that I see. So. Alright, so I think some of the drawbacks to writing a digital text is that, one, I think the main one is that it's an unfamiliar territory where you're using new tools and you might not necessarily know how to use them. So you can't just write. You need to know all these other things, all these other programs. You might have to write code. You might have to find other people to collaborate with, because you might not be able to do it on your own if you have a vision and you can't quite access that vision without help. So it's not a solo artist anymore. It's more of a collaboration, and that's can be a benefit too, but Right now I'm talking about if you don't want that, so that would be a drawback. The other drawback is that it's a public medium, and so it's a different sphere. And again, it's not necessarily all bad, but it's different, and you're writing on a massive scale, and I think you lose some of that personality to the writing, in my opinion. And then if you're trying to write digitally, you're writing in a certain way. Where I feel it's a little more limiting, although you might find it more, you might have more freedom if that's your outlook, but it might not necessarily always stay that way. But the other thing is some people feel like the amount of people, everybody can publish their writing on the internet, so there's no checks and balances, and they feel like it's watering down the field a little bit. But that can also be a really great thing. So just another thing to think about. But the other thing is that could be a drawback to writing is what happened in the music industry. So you had, when music went digital, you had music that you could download on iTunes, and most people, at least people I know, download songs, and you can see the popularity of the songs, and you go, oh, that's really popular now, what is it? And less and less people download the whole CD, and even more artists now are writing more hits. They're not necessarily thinking about these coherent albums and how it will sound all together to set a mood, or to have one line of thinking, or so I'm afraid that might happen with the writing industry, is that you know, popular music hits or hits on YouTube, so it's all about popularity, and it might be less about the artist. Yeah, less about the artists and what they wanted to write, and more about the reader or listener who's going to purchase that, or yeah, so that's definitely a drawback, or it could be. It doesn't have to be so doom and gloom, but it could be. So in terms of the unknown, I think the writing drawbacks for that is that it was such a massive project that it's, I would imagine it would take a very long time to pull that off, and you do have to work collaboratively, and especially if you're not a programmer, if you're not able to do everything that you want to do with that project. So it's more personalized, I think, the writing drawbacks, because if you're a writer that really loves this medium, you're going to think it's great. So myself, who I like to dabble in some fiction writing, I would see that writing digitally would be a lot harder, and not necessarily get the same feeling that I would want to get out of it artistically. Where if you're an artist and you really love technology and you want to integrate it, then you're going to love the digital text. So I do think it's definitely about personal preference. Yeah. All right, so some of the writing benefits, one of them in particular is that anyone can publish. And this is great because you don't have all the middlemen, the hoops, the gimmicks. You can be a writer and self-publish, and nobody can stop you. So that's great in that you get a diversity, diverse number of people from diverse backgrounds. You don't have to just be a rich kid or try really hard to get your stuff published. So that's fantastic. And the other really cool writing benefit is that it's a new frontier. It's artists have a whole new world to explore. They can invent, be risky, racy. So it's just a really cool thing to be a part of, something that's just starting up. So artists really can do whatever they want and be as creative as they want. And they're not bound together by the bindings of a book, I guess. There's just so much opportunity for them in the digital world, and we haven't even started to tap into that. So that's very exciting. So that's definitely a benefit. And the other benefits could be collaboration for those who want collaboration, and that can be a great thing, because with collaboration you get multiple minds working on one thing, and that can create some really cool projects, definitely, most definitely. The other cool writing benefit is that it blurs the boundaries between all these different like writer and programmer and editor, so all these different what are they called? Well, whatever they are, you start to have somebody who can write, who can code write, who can edit, who can draw, who can do all sorts of things, and so with this collaboration, you're starting to redefine what those roles, that's the word I'm looking for. You're starting to redefine those roles in a very cool way, and expanding them. So that's really cool whenever you're pushing those boundaries. So the unknown, for example, the writing benefits. So it's a performance piece, ironically simulating a rock band tour. So it totally reminds me of On the Road. So what I thought was, wouldn't that be a cool project? Somebody's probably already done it, but, beat generation, drugs, jazz. I mean, they could do hyperlinks everywhere for this sort of thing, and all the beat writers and poets, Ginsberg, it'd be really cool. So one of the writing benefits is just the amount of information that you can put in a project to make it all-encompassing, to really push the limits of what you can do, where you're very limited in terms of how many pages are in your book. So that's definitely a writing benefit. I saw one project for the World's Fair, and all the architectural designs and all the interviews, and so there's just so much that you can do digitally that you can't do in a limited print book. Even encyclopedias, I don't have the space in my house to store all the encyclopedias of knowledge that I would like to learn and know and be knowledgeable of. And so that's the really cool thing about a digital text, is they link different texts and resources together, so you can learn a lot more in a shorter amount of time without having to purchase large stacks of books. So that's definitely one of the writing benefits is that you can incorporate all that for your readers, so they have like a one-stop shopping. My favorite Shakespeare books are the ones that have all the commentary in them and all the critiques, and I just love to read the different interpretations and criticisms, and the hypertexts really have blown through that, because it can exponentially do more with that little space on the internet, and they're not limited at all. So that's probably one of the greatest writing benefits that there is for digital texts. So thank you for listening.